This is Bizz Buzz Beyond the Suit.
Welcome to Bizz Buzz Beyond the Suit, and I'm so excited today to have Fran Collins, the CEO of Red Funnel, and Fiona Robson, the MD of Solent Stevedores, with me. When we had the idea for this podcast, you two were top of my list, and I thought, I can't wait to get you in, especially because I've done little chats with Fran over time and also with Fiona. So to combine the two of you is going to be good, I can tell. So I think I'll start with that a question for you, Fran, about how long you've been running Red Funnel.
Gosh, I've been at Red Funnel for 7 years now, just coming up to 7 years. I started in 2018. Having come from another ferry operator, Condor Ferries, before that, and it's gone really quickly, to be honest.
I bet. And your background prior to, what was the sort of career path for you?
So my career path is probably a little bit unconventional for the role I do now. I went away to sea at the age of 16. I actually did my cadetship in the Merchant Navy initially up in South Tyneside, and then I did my later licences, which we need to become captains and the like in the industry. I did those at Warsash University, which is now obviously part of Southampton.
Yes.
So got a little bit of a local touch to it.
Yes. Yeah.
So I went away to sea. I spent the first sort of few years of my career sailing around the world. Literally spent a lot of time in the Caribbean, the Far East, the Middle East, and it was great. Amazing. Don't ever let anyone tell you it isn't.
Yeah,
and then I came to work more locally. I went down to Poole to Condor Ferries, and I worked there as chief officer and then master on the ships. And then I came ashore for a 6-month secondment in, I think it was about 2007. And my 6 months turned into, 20 years ago nearly now.
The career that you have.
The career I have now.
Yeah,
and I've just moved through management, and I've been very lucky to do different parts and different roles, because it's really important when you're the chief exec that you're not actually the subject matter expert. Mm-hmm. So you need to have a very generalist knowledge, whether that's the finance function, the operational function, the health and safety, the marketing, the commercial aspects. So that's sort of a potted history of my career.
Yeah, and to have that understanding. And do you enjoy being landside now, or are you itching to get back on board?
I always love to get my hands back on the sticks on the ships, and I'm really lucky with Red Funnel. I do keep my licence valid, but I'm definitely not current. So if it's a nice day and the master says, "Do you want to have a drive?" then I'll take him up on it, or her up on it. And if it's blowing old boots and windy, I let them do it, because they are the subject matter experts.
Yeah,
and they're doing it every day.
Amazing. And over to you, Fiona. How did your career start? How do you come to be at the helm at Solent Stevedores?
So I've worked for Solent Stevedores for 25 years now. And I started off just doing all the admin. And then I went from doing the admin to becoming the finance director. And then from being finance director to managing director, which I think I've been for about 8 years now, I think.
Yeah.
But previous to that, I did all sorts of things.
And we're going to go on to that. I'm so excited with the fun things that you've done in the past. But having started sort of in that admin role and then rising to become managing director, I mean, did you ever sort of think that was the career trajectory for you?
No, funnily enough, somebody asked me that question today, and I was like, I've never been a planner. I've never had like a life plan, and this is what I want to achieve. This is who I want to be. Things just happen, yes. And I'm very sort of like, oh well, let's just see what happens tomorrow type person.
Yes, yeah.
Which is probably good, because it means I'm not a big flapper when things go wrong, which is quite important.
Yeah,
for my role.
Does it often go wrong, Fiona?
Well, no, it's a very people-orientated business, and people sometimes do silly things.
The most ridiculous things.
Yeah.
Yeah. And can you tell us a little bit about Solent Stevedores for people who are listening and who may not be familiar with?
Okay, so it's a business that Stuart set up. Stu's still the founder and owner.
And Stuart is...
He is my brother.
Your brother, yeah.
And he set up a salt business originally, which was sort of trading salt. Mm. And I started with him because he was doing it all by himself and he just needed some help. And I said I would do his admin, and it's just grown and grown.
Yeah.
So we came into the docks in the year 2000 and took on the bulks terminal to Stevedore. For those people that don't know what a stevedore is, it's essentially the correct word for docker.
Yes.
But
yes.
yeah, Solent Dockers doesn't sound quite the same as Solent Stevedores.
Like that alliteration, yeah.
Yeah. So we just took care of the bulks terminal. We 2P'd across, I think, 8 staff. And it went from doing about 150,000 tonnes of bulks a year to we do well over 1 million now. And in our best month, we've actually done over 150,000 in a month.
That's amazing. And is that just in Southampton that
That's,
you're doing those
so that
volumes?
was just, yeah, that's just in Southampton. But we also have sort of spread our wings a bit. So now we do probably 90% of the cruise ships in Southampton. And we
and when
also,
you say do, that's
that means we handle the baggage and the stores. So with the ship docks, we moor it and we take all the waste and stuff off that needs to come off. We're going to get all the bags off. We lay them out in the baggage hall, which is very much like an airport, really.
Yeah.
And then we get the next lot of passengers are checked in and we get their bags all on. And in the meantime, they load all the stores.
And it's like a military operation.
It is like a military operation.
It's just phenomenal, isn't it?
And sometimes we've got as many as 5 ships in one day to service. So
Goodness me.
and they all have to be away by 4 o'clock. So you haven't got a lot of time to turn them around. And of course the ships get bigger. Like when we first started doing it, you know, probably sort of 3,500, 4,000 passenger ships were the biggest. Now they're 6,000, and that's 12,000 punters that you're
on and off
in one day.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's phenomenal, isn't it? And so, do you flex with the number of people that you're employing to sort of deal with the volume of those ships? Then, or?
Absolutely. So we have a core team of our staff, which are permanent staff, and then we flex up and down with agency staff. So we work very closely with SCPS. I don't know if you know them.
Yes.
They're amazing, and that's how we do it, because you couldn't, if you say it takes about 70 staff per cruise ship, and like I said, and some days we have as many as 5 cruise ships to service. That's an awful lot of people, but we wouldn't have enough work to keep them employed full time. So we flex up and down with the agency, which is great.
Yeah.
So we work very closely with them.
Amazing. And then there's your operation in London, isn't there? And
So then we do all the sugar for Tate and Lyle in Silvertown in London. And we have a container storage, maintenance and repair yard in London Gateway. We have a cement and PFA operation in Immingham in the Humber. We have a ferry operation. We do everything that goes in and out by sea in Jersey. In St Malo we do the ferries and we do bulks, and in Singapore we do cruise ships. Same thing as we do here.
That's
The
incredible,
cruise ships
isn't it?
over there.
yeah. And so, was it from learning how to run the whole thing here that basically you were able to sort of transfer that to Singapore then? Yeah.
Yes. I mean, if I'm honest, I don't have anything to do with running Singapore on a day-to-day basis. We couldn't manage that here from here. So we have a guy over there that actually worked from it before. That Singapore's the only business that we actually bought the business. Other than that, we've always taken stuff over by contract or whatever and 2P staff, but we actually bought that business. And Benji was running it, and he still does.
Yeah. Incredible. And it's great to see, isn't it, a local business that has just, grown so well, hasn't it?
Yeah, it's been phenomenal,
expanded.
actually.
Yeah. But and retains that. I don't know. When I was working in the port, I was always impressed by, you were so sort of family orientated and really involved with your staff, weren't you? It's.
I think dockers are, particularly, it is a traditional old school type job, and a lot of it is family orientated. And we have got people that we've got sort of 3 generations still working for us at the same time. But often, they're sort of 4 or 5 generation families. So if you talk to the old boys, like their grandfather worked in the docks, their father worked in the docks, they work in the docks, their sons have their grandson. There's not many industries like that anymore.
not at all.
No.
It's really interesting, isn't it? And what do you enjoy most about your role, Fran? What are the highlights?
Gosh, I think a lot of it, it's really corny to say it, but actually the teams that we work with. Generally, when you start to see a business, and Red Funnel goes as every other business through ups and downs. We have a lot of technical challenges over the last year, but actually it's the way the team pulls together. And I work with some amazing people across our business, and the little thing, today I went into my office and someone had put something on my desk, and it was one of those trolls from the 80s.
Oh, yeah.
And it was just a little note. It said, "This is a belated Christmas present." And it was a little just to say, this is the team you've got behind you. We're doing, it's something that's really nice.
Isn't
and you
that
think,
nice?
actually, we're a fairly big business comparatively. We employ sort of up to 500 staff. And actually, when somebody's taken the time in your team
To do
that, that does make it feel really special to be able to know the names of the people you work with. We're big enough that we are an entity, but we're small enough that we know who we work with.
Yes.
And I find that really special.
Yeah. And can you tell the listeners a little bit about Red Funnel as well, Fran, the sort of history of Red Funnel?
Yeah, so Red Funnel's been operating across the Solent for over 160 years. It was started it's run tugs, it's run passenger vessels, steam vessels. We haven't just gone to the Isle of Wight. We've done things where we went off down the coast. We actually tried to service to France. We've always been quite a brave company.
Yeah.
And I think over the last few years we've lost a little bit of that, and we've done what we've always done. But actually now going forward we are being brave again. We've taken a commission on a new fully electric e-foiling ferry which comes into service at the end of this year, which will supplement the high-speed fleet going to the Isle of Wight and back, and that will be the first fully electric passenger vessel on the Solent.
Amazing.
And we're in a point, and I'm going to get on my soapbox, so I'm sorry, but decarbonisation is really important, and in marine and maritime it's actually really quite hard, particularly around the provision of electricity and the like. But in order to take advantage of new technology, we have to be brave, and all of us as operators, and I'm sure for we don't want to be at bleeding edge technology. We like safe, tried and tested.
Yeah.
Our customers want to come to the Isle of Wight knowing that. So for us to take an opportunity to supplement the fleet with brand new bleeding edge technology, we do have to be brave for that. And it's very easy, I think, for people to say, well, are you sure that's a good idea?
Yeah.
But if we're not brave, we're not going to change.
And it's because at some point it has to happen, doesn't it?
And somebody has to be first.
Yes, yeah. And you've got to run it alongside, I guess, to begin with, haven't you? And then, if all goes well.
Exactly. And to be honest, so far, all the testing we've done, we've been absolutely blown away by it.
Yeah.
And we've been in a 12-metre prototype out in 3.5-metre seas, and that was amazing. It's really exciting.
Amazing. And have you tested that round here, or?
We've got I shouldn't say it too much. We've got a boat coming in to test in the next few days down in Cowes, and then we've got the prototype coming down for trials and some media days. So I hope you'll come along, Kate. That's in May.
I'd love that. Yeah,
So.
amazing. And that must fill you with joy, I guess, mustn't it? Looking ahead to that, because it has been quite a difficult time, hasn't it, for Red Funnel in recent times, and you sort of touched on a little bit with the running the service, and there's been sort of, I guess, inconsistencies, haven't there?
Yeah, and it's no secret we're running 3 quite old vessels now through, and obviously we'd had a plan we call it retonnaging, to replace those vessels with pre-COVID. The intention was the first vessel would be in service in 2026, and then of course when COVID came, for our business we were all about survival, with the volumes dropping so considerably to the island, and that delayed the plans to put the new tonnage in. At the moment we've been doing an investment raise to do that, and that's going really well. But again, going back to one of the things I really love about my job, the e-foiling vessel, the Artemis, that's been in the planning now for 18 months. So what starts as an idea, as you start to take it through, and everything takes longer than you want it to.
Of course, yeah.
But when you start off with the idea, and then you see that idea grow to fruition, and then you sign the contract, and then you start to have the discussions, and you see everybody else getting excited about it, that is another real buzz. And it's the same with the new tonnage. We've got the designs done. We're coming to the end of the investment raise programme, so we'll be going out to shipyards this year. That's really exciting.
And it looks so cool, doesn't it? I mean, I've only seen the pictures that have
and it
been
looks
on
like
social media.
They look like something
amazing.
out of the future, but that's what it looks like.
Yeah, so exciting. Yeah, I'll definitely be there in May. Can I take the both of you back to your childhoods and what you thought you would do as a job? Can we go to you, Fiona, first? What did you think was going to happen?
Okay, I thought I would be a ballet dancer, but those hopes were soon dashed when I grew and grew and grew. For those people that don't know me, I'm 6'1". Like no ballet dancer is 6'1". So
There
yes,
should be, though. There should be 6'1" ballet dancers.
I'm sure. Also, the other handicap was I wasn't actually very good at
Oh
it.
dear, oh dear.
It was just a childhood dream.
Yes,
Yeah.
but nevertheless. And did you have other sort of thoughts then? You didn't ever imagine, I guess, that you would work, as you're doing now with your brother's firm, but.
No, never. No, I would never have seen this in the future, to be honest. But I've loved it.
Yeah.
I do love it.
Yes.
I love the docks. I love the industry.
Yeah.
And I feel very privileged to be in it.
To be part of it.
Yeah.
To be part of it. So one of the most exciting things I know about you, Fiona, is that you appear in the credits for the film Labyrinth. Tell me how that happened.
That's very true. So I was living in London and I'd been a nurse and I'd quit and I just applied for this job that said it was receptionist for a workshop. So I went along for the interview and it turned out the workshop was owned by Jim Henson, who is of the Muppets fame.
Yes.
And it was called the Creature Workshop, and it was where they made all the puppets and stuff for Star Wars, the Muppets, Fraggle Rock.
Oh my word.
And I got the job. And then I went from there to Jim Henson had a house across the road, and he had like a housekeeper / assistant for when he was in the UK. And she quit. And so I sort of stepped into that job.
Yeah.
And then they were working on the Labyrinth, making all the puppets and stuff. And then we moved out to the studios and I just kind of went with. And so I've had the privilege of working with David Bowie and Warwick Davis when he was about 12.
And what was Bowie like?
Bowie.
Yeah.
Amazing.
Really?
He was such a lovely person. He really was. So quite difficult to work with. We used to lose him on a regular basis, but he always seemed to just reappear on set the next day at the right time. So it was one of my jobs was making sure that his car arrived to pick him up and take him away and take him home. And he regularly ditched the driver. So he would say, "Can you just stop here, driver? I just want to get some cigarettes," and never be seen again. But would turn up on set the next day. So, yeah, he was a real character, but really lovely. He didn't treat anybody. He had no airs and graces about him.
No.
Really lovely.
Amazing.
The first time I met him, I was so starstruck that I dropped everything I was carrying, and he just bent down and picked it up and said, "There you go."
Oh, that's nice, isn't it?
I was like, "Ah."
Oh, how nice. That's
Yeah.
great. That's great. And again, the cultural reference for Labyrinth. Tell me about the film Labyrinth.
So it's yeah.
I'm going to describe this.
I'm not actually sure. Have you not seen the Labyrinth? Kate?
I have.
You have.
Yes.
Okay, so it's
That's why I'm
it's a
passing it to you.
fantasy. It's a fantasy movie, really, essentially, and I think it's based really around this girl's dreams. And David Bowie's the Goblin King, and they're the goblins, and they steal this little girl that doesn't really like her baby brother. So the Goblin King steals him, and then she has to find him through a labyrinth.
And the Goblin King fell in love with her.
And the Goblin King fell in love with her. Well done, Fran.
That was I'm a massive fan of Labyrinth.
You've probably watched it more times than I have.
Times. My sister and I are great fans.
Oh, that's so cool.
Yeah.
And what was your credit on there?
I don't know. I can't even remember what it says, what it actually says. But you can look it up because
Is
if you
it runner or assistant or something?
assistant. I think it just says assistant.
I've looked at it.
Have you got? I know her.
Yeah, that's my friend.
Is it IMDb? If you go on that, if you put my
yeah,
name
yeah,
in it,
yeah.
I mean, I didn't realise that. One of my
It's your
sons,
old name,
one of
though.
my sons told me that. Yeah,
How
obviously not
neat.
Fiona Robson
How neat.
because it was pre being married, so
Yeah.
it was Fiona Cullen. But
How amazing.
yeah,
That's so cool.
It was-
isn't it?
fun.
Fantastic. And the exciting sort of fact that I know about you, Fran, is that during your career, you have encountered pirates on the high sea. Tell me
so
about
that wasn't
that.
as
Tell
ex-
me
it's-
about that.
It's not as exciting, I guess, in a way. It's piracy is still a very real thing.
Yes.
And the incident I was involved in, we were taking a ship to scrap in Bangladesh. So what happens with that is basically the ship is sold for scrap, and then everything that's not needed on the ship is taken off. It's all the cargo, all of the goods. You sail to the port that you're going to be scrapped at, and then you have to wait along at anchor in the bay until there's the highest possible tide of the month. And then you try and get the ship to go as fast as you can and run it up the beach, and the tide goes out and the ship is beached basically. And then they start the deconstruction. But in this instance, we were on a supertanker waiting outside the port of Chittagong, and I was actually an engineer on that ship, and I was on the bridge after my watch because I think there were two of us who were native English speakers. There was a Canadian guy, so I went on the bridge at midnight, was having a cup of tea with the second officer, and the Filipino watchkeeper called the bridge, and he'd been right at the forward end of the ship, what we call the forecastle, and he said, "We've been boarded, I'm coming back," and he was quite panicked in his voice. So we're like, oh, he says, what's going on? And we were trying to see with the binoculars because it was a very long ship,
Yeah.
and we can see the Filipino watchkeeper running down the deck because we always keep the accommodation block as a citadel,
Uh-huh.
so it's always, you have piracy.
the safe place.
And then we can hear him, he's saying they've got a bowler. They've got a bowler. And we're like, what's a bowler? It turns out actually a bowler is a big knife.
oh my
Um,
word.
and so the precaution in that instance is you take everyone into the citadel, into the accommodation. That is then barricaded from the inside, and we have the fire hoses up on the bridge and on the outside so that you can try and keep people away from it.
Wow.
And we were in that instance, this was pirates who'd boarded, they'd climbed up the anchor cable, and they stole what we had in the way of mooring ropes, and I think there was a bit of paint left in the paint locker, but we were lucky because piracy is a very real
yes.
thing.
Yeah.
And there are lots of incidents that
don't turn out
don't
well.
turn out so well. In that one, that was fairly small scale in that instance. But even today, if we're taking, not for Red Funnel clearly, but
No.
industry wide, if you're going through certain areas, particularly in the Red Sea, then piracy precautions are a very real thing. You put the ships in convoy, you put razor
Okay.
wire up around the edges.
Yeah,
You'll quite
wow.
often charter external security companies to come on board
Golly.
through, and it's a
Yeah.
huge issue still actually.
Yeah. And how did you feel at that time with that happening around you? I mean, I guess with everybody else, you just go do what you've trained for.
What you've
don't
trained
you?
for,
But-
and I think that's the interesting thing. Certainly with the Merchant Navy, with military defence, anything like that, you drill a lot for these situations. And when you're on the ship, you'll do a drill every week. So, for example, if you're going into piracy, you've undertaken the piracy drill, so you know what you do. And I think there's an element, perhaps when you're younger, you don't realise the risk that you're carrying. And certainly some of the situations I was in on ships, I was on a ship that had a fire on a generator. And now with hindsight and a bit more maturity behind me, I look back and think, oh God, that was actually really quite dodgy. But at the time, your training kicks in, you go through a very scripted routine, basically. And I don't think afterwards, it's not until you get older that you actually realise. And also, when you're younger, you go, oh, we dealt with that, on to the next thing.
Yes, yeah.
But like Fee, I'm not really a flapper or a panicker. So like I raise an eyebrow and think, oh, manage that over there. And,
Yes, yeah.
and there is a point where you have to look back and say, actually, what did we learn from that, and what would I do differently next time? And that's probably the difference in our roles in business as well.
Yes, yeah. And the friendship between the two of you, how long has that been existing?
Years, actually.
It is,
We
yeah.
first met each other in Jersey, I think, didn't we?
Yep.
On a Navy boat.
Yep. On it, yes, at
Oh,
a
wow.
function.
The HMS Iron Duke, I
Yeah.
think it was called.
Oh, right, yeah.
Because Fran worked for Condor,
Yes, yeah.
and obviously we were in Jersey as Solent Stevedores, and
Was it Liberation Day?
I think it was.
It was a Liberation Day celebration, and I can't... Obviously, you were stevedoring our ships,
Yeah.
and somehow we ended up at the same function.
Same function, yeah.
And our industry, to be frank, is very male-dominated still.
Yes.
So there aren't a great deal of women in senior roles. and that function was very male dominated and probably very traditional.
Yeah.
I think we raised an eyebrow at each other.
And you knew you'd be friends.
Jersey is a very. It's a bit like going back in time.
Yes,
It really is. I mean, when we first started going out there, you still couldn't get a mortgage as a female without having a brother, father, or husband as a signature. And I just remember being, and your husband had to do your tax.
Yeah.
I was really shocked, to be honest.
Yeah.
It has changed quite a lot in the time that we've been there.
Yeah.
But yeah, we met sort of drawn to each other because there weren't many of us.
No.
There.
We're both quite tall.
Yeah, we're both quite tall,
Yes.
and then we ended
love
up going. Yes, we ended up going on somewhere else for a drink afterwards, and we've been friends ever since.
Great, that's great.
Yeah.
And the whole thing with sort of women in your sector, do you think? I mean, are more women coming through now? Do you think are the roles more attractive for women, or is there still more that needs to be done?
I think the sector is becoming much more inclusive, and what we need to be in the sector is actually more visible, not just as women, but the sector as a whole. And I think we place great focus on degrees and further education, and I don't have a problem with that, but certainly there is a large part of the demographic generally for whom that's not a great way to do it. I left school at 16 and I did my qualifications later in life and separately, and actually it's not a better or a worse path, it's a different path. So I think from an industry perspective, going out and really making sure that we're visible. How many people in the UK know that 95% of Britain's goods come in by sea? That's completely unseen. If you say you're in the Merchant Navy, people think you're talking about the Royal Navy. But as a whole, I think now we are seeing more women coming through, and I think we're looking across the UK at something like about 7% officers are now female across the UK against a global average of 2%.
Okay, yeah.
But it's never going to appeal to a 50-50 split, because if you're going away for 2, 3, 4 months at a time, it makes it hard for people to have a family.
It's difficult, isn't it?
I don't know if you're seeing more in yours, Fee.
It is difficult, I think, because we've got lots of girls coming through, but it tends to be the only jobs that most of the girls apply for are admin-based jobs. So we have got girls, we've got mechanics that have gone through apprenticeships, but we've only actually got one that started the apprenticeship and stayed. We've got a girl that heads up the maintenance and repair in the container yard. She's great, Chloe. And we've got Ellen, who does the health and safety. A few girls that work in the rail yard, but largely it's difficult to get them. I don't know how to find a way to get to talk to them to show it's got more appeal,
as an option,
because I think it's still got that sort of view, particularly the stevedoring side of, well, it's just men dockers.
Yes.
But it's not actually like that, really. And even being the role of a docker has changed massively. It's not the same as it was 60, 70 years ago. I'd love to find a way. I mean, I'd love to be able to attract some female crane drivers, and they have loads in Rotterdam.
Yes.
But we've never seemed to be able to. I don't know.
Yes, yeah. So we need to work on that.
And it's a great industry. The camaraderie across maritime is really strong.
Yeah.
It's a fun industry to be in.
Yeah.
And it's actually, again, you go back to when I first went to sea, and I don't think I ever sailed. Maybe once I sailed with another woman, but I was always the only woman on the ships. And it is quite a banter-driven culture, but I never felt discriminated against. It's clearly, being female hasn't stopped me in my career. And that's not to say that's been everybody's experience, but generally with seafarers, my experience was that there's a lot of banter, but actually, because your life does depend on the person stood next to you or on watch, that actually, as long as you can do the job, nobody really cares what sex, gender, that
it's not an issue.
Take the mickey out of you for everything.
Yes, of course. But then I'm sure you give as good as you get, don't you, Phil?
Had a bit of practice.
Oh, that's wonderful. I think we're going to sort of draw things to a close there. But what if there was one thing that could be changed, you think, to get more women into those roles in your businesses? What do you think that might be, and what would you hope the situation might be in, I don't know, 5 years' time?
For me, it's awareness. At Red Funnel, we actually have a really strong split. We're something like, I think, we're about 28% women across the business, across the male-dominated. We've got women in every level of leadership. And as masters, we've got them. I think it's more about making sure women do come through. And it's not just about women, it's about talent into the business. We see people now, again, going back very much into a more traditional university next steps. The advent of technology and maritime means that these opportunities, it's not just an old-fashioned physical job, although those jobs will still exist in our industry for many years, I think. But with the advent of AI and technology, the requirements we have are changing enormously, and I think there's a massive opportunity there for young people to come in and make a difference.
Yeah, definitely.
That's where I would like to really see it.
And Fiona, anything to add?
Yeah, it's something we've talked about a lot, isn't it? How to attract girls into the... And I think maybe try when they're really young. So, you know, I've had conversations with the guys in the yard about, you know, having a day when we get all the machines out and bring your family in, and, you know, daughters, to see if you could get them excited about driving some of these big bits of kit. And maybe that's one of the ways forward. I don't know, but I'd love to see more girls in this industry
coming through. Wonderful. Thank you so much for your time today. I've really enjoyed it.
It's gone really
you.
quickly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thanks, Kate.
Thank you.